put in your transmit frequency and you put in the spacing. Again, we would do this by default for you. But in the manual, we list out some possible options for you to use, some suggested configurations. But you could put anything else in there. Effectively, if this is below 24,150, then we know that we need to add that to the other one. If it's above it, we know that we need to subtract to get to the receive. Okay. Transmit power, legal limit's going to be negative, well, it's 0 on the 1 and 2 foot, and negative 3 on the 3 foot antennas. Okay. Transmitter, because op mode didn't make any sense, we changed the name to something that does. So transmitter on, transmitter off. Okay, you set your bandwidth here. Okay, so you pick what your bandwidth you want to be. And like I mentioned before, you set the min and the maximum modulation now. Okay, so there is no ACM on-off. Okay, ACM is effectively always on, but if you wanted it basically ACM off, you could just do min and max to both be the same modulation.
Would you put those in the into the lowest setting, both of them, just to outpoint, or does it make a difference?
Doesn't really make a difference. All you're looking at, I mean, even having a lock doesn't make a difference when you're aligning. All you're really looking for is the signal. So you just look at the meter, the multimeter out there, and you look for the most power you can get. Yeah, there's a voltage. Now, this is the current channel bandwidth here. When we do the ACS, you'll see the other one. You'll see it change here. Okay, so this will be 10 when it's in ACS, and then it shows you the user set is 60 as well. Okay. Now, you see also here on the right-hand side, we've got our IP address and our subnet mask and all that stuff right here. What we had, the problem with the one in the back, was that we had the data port set to GE2, which is the fiber port. Okay, so it worked coming over the air because we don't restrict that, but locally it was trying to use that GE2 as the port, and GE1 wasn't doing anything.
What's the acronym for GE? What does that stand for?
Gigabit Ethernet 1, Gigabit Ethernet 2. We can turn the IBM tagging on or off. Okay. If we want to, we can specify a VLAN if we want to. And by default, IBM is enabled on this product. Okay. If we went IBM enable off, what it's going to do is it's going to actually switch the GE1, the port that you're in right now, that you're using for management. It's going to make that the out-of-band management interface. So you can continue to manage the radio. And it will make the data port GE2. Okay? So IBM off, management will stay on the same port that it's set to now, which you're managing, so you can always manage the radio. And then the data port, when you refresh the page, will show it's on GE2.
Is that like exclusive? GE2 automatically becomes the data port, or is it just whatever has a link in?
No, it's whatever you are using right now to manage the radio, you will keep the management.
Okay, so if I was on GE2,
then the data would move to GE1,
okay,
and your management will stay on GE2. So we do it so that you keep the management. Because we figure that's what's important. Whatever you do, you want to be able to manage the radio.
Restart file.
Yeah. Right. So contrary to the other products we talked about before, there's only this one interface. Okay, it doesn't have in-band or out-of-band, both at the same time. You just have the one. Okay, so it's a little bit simpler to manage. Okay. Go back to Orion, we're going to have the two interfaces again. But that's how the management works a little differently. You can specify latitude and longitude here. It's really just for your own, your own sake at this point. Unit ID is that remarked field that shows up here. And after 5 minutes, it logs you out. Okay, ACS is the adaptive channel size. Okay, if you want it to be on, you just turn it on. If you don't want it on, you just leave it off. You do want to make sure that ACS is off anytime that you are changing your bandwidth or your modulation settings. Okay, so ACS off, submit, then change your bandwidth and modulations, submit. Then once the link is up and running again, you can turn ACS on, submit.
And ACS is bandwidth?
ACS is the adaptive channel size. So ACM, the adaptive coding and modulation that takes it from 1024 to 512 down to QPSK, is always on. ACS is what will take you from, say, the 60 meg channel to the 10 meg channel.
If it can do it on the data rate you specify.
No, if ACS is on, it'll drop you to the 10 meg channel if it's going to drop the link.
Oh, if you pull up the link, also ACS you want it on.
Along with ACM. They both have to be on at the same time, right?
Again, ACM is always on.
Oh, okay.
So without ACS on, it's always going to stay on whatever bandwidth you set it on?
Channel, yeah, channel size, yeah, the bandwidth.
So if the signal started getting, if the signal's degraded, easy for me to say, and you didn't have ACS on, you could potentially lose the link?
Yes.
Got it.
That's not on by default.
Not on by default because you don't necessarily want that on when you're trying to first set it up because it's going to be changing back and forth constantly and you just don't want that mess. Okay. Any question on there? Ports, this is like that Ethernet before, you know, you turn off auto negotiate, hard code the settings if you need to for whatever reason. Same thing with the priorities, okay? It says the same 4 queues. PLA, okay, if you're going to use the PLA, we do have a master-slave relationship there. So on the radio that has the traffic coming into it, you would go master, and then on the radio that has it, that doesn't have any interface back to your switch, you would make that the slave. If you're going to use the PLA, you're more than likely going to run out-of-band management. Okay, you could do in-band management to the first radio, but you're probably going to want to do out-of-band to the second. I would probably do out-of-band to both if I was doing the PLA. Quality of service. We introduced a few new options here with quality of service now. Okay, so we have what we're used to, which is the strict mode, okay, or the weighted round robin mode. Or something that we've had some interest in is doing just Q3 strict, and the other ones would be weighted round, or Q2 and Q3 strict with the other Qs being weighted. Okay, so that would allow you to give stricts to quality to Q2 and Q3, and then what's left you can say I want to balance that between the remaining 2 Qs, or in this case I would give 3 times of the remaining balance to Q1. And then one third of it, if you will, 1/4 of it to Q0. Okay.
And could you leave that at pretty much default without doing anything to it if you didn't need to?
Yeah. The default now, I believe that this is shipping out as Q2, Q3 strict. So it'll give you a little bit of both worlds there. Contrary to the license, this is now shipping with the DSCP values set, and they're not in this. They've obviously been changed. But this is set with the typical DSCP values mapped to the priorities that are typically used. Okay. So if you do use a StrataLink, you may want to pay attention to that diff serve because it will take effect even if you didn't have it taking effect before. Okay.